Ash from Super Videos back for another Q&A video. This is going to be Q&A number 32. As always, if you're not caught up with the Walking Dead's TV show and comic book, you may not want to watch this video because it may spoil some things for you. So let's get right into this. Let's start with the Walking Dead's TV show questions. The first question comes from Final Mystery T, and they have a couple questions. The first one, if Negan had killed Carl with Lucille, what do you think Rick would do? So that's a great question. I think if Negan did in fact Lucille Carl instead of Abraham and Glenn in the first episode of season 7, I think Rick would not act so rationally. He would definitely jump up and attack Negan, much like what Daryl did. But the difference would be that Rick wouldn't stop after the Saviors take him down. He would still try to get to Negan, because of course he just saw his kid get Lucilled brutally right in front of his face. So he would act irrationally, and he would have a much bigger vengeance than he does right now to make Negan pay for what he's done. And he may even go crazy, much like how he went crazy when Lori died. But that's a great question. The next question you have is, if you could turn any good character from Rick's group into a villain or turn on Rick to side with Negan, who would you choose to make the TV show more interesting? That's actually another great question. But the thing is, I can't see any of our core characters right now doing that because it's just not in their character to do something like that. Now, if we're not talking about core characters like Carol, like Daryl, like Sasha, like Rosita, people like that. If we're talking about secondary characters, yeah, I can see some of the Alexandrians or even maybe some of the Kingdomers or Hilltoppers doing that, turning on Rick and going with Negan. But this doesn't fit any of our core characters. It's not in any of their character to do anything like this. So that's why I just can't see it happening. So yeah, but that's a great question. The next one you have, if you could cast a major actor or actress for the show in a guest appearance, who would you pick and what role would you have for them? Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I would probably say someone that is known for their action flicks and those Hollywood action movies. Someone like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson would be cool. Even as a walker, to have a walker as big as Dwayne Johnson would be very cool. But also, even if he comes in as a villain, that would be very interesting too. But other than that, I think it would definitely be very cool to get someone like Anthony Hopkins. Of course, he's done an amazing job in Westworld, but it would be very interesting to see him in a world like The Walking Dead as well. And, you know, for him, it would make more sense if he is one of the good guys, because of course in Westworld he is the villain kind of thing. So to kind of change it a little bit, it'll be cool if he is one of the good guys in The Walking Dead temporarily. Like you said, it's a guest appearance, but it would be amazing if we get something like that. Also, Bryan Cranston would be pretty cool as well. But yeah, that's a good question too. The next question comes from TheBlackAntiHero. They ask, would you like to see snow in The Walking Dead? Absolutely. I think a change of environment would definitely be beneficial for the show, because in the TV show we've never seen any environment other than the sunny, hot days of Georgia. And even when we do get some episodes where it's raining, like the one back in season 5 when they were in the barn and it was stormy outside and they took shelter in the barn, and when they got out, all the trees were kind of like down and stuff. So that's one instance of rain I can think of, but other than that, it's mostly been nice, sunny, hot days. And to see a change of environment, it would definitely be beneficial if they have snow. So that would be something they could definitely add in, because that would be very interesting. Not just the environment itself, but the way it changes things. Because of course when there's snow, some walkers are going to be frozen. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the walkers are going to look like that. So yeah, I would definitely like to have snow in The Walking Dead TV show. The next question comes from Bilat Ni Jeny. They have a couple questions as well. The first one, if you were part of the show, what role would you like to play? I would say a walker. It would be pretty amazing to be a walker in The Walking Dead. But if I were to play an actual character, I would probably like to play a character that is at Alexandria, someone who's at Alexandria. That would be very interesting. But I like playing the walker more. I don't know why, but it'll be pretty epic to dress up as a walker and interact with the crew. And it would be even more badass and better if you get an iconic walker death. like that. So you're part of history. So that would be pretty amazing as well. The next question you have is, do you think the season will end up with Rick smiling and eager for the war? So I definitely think this season is going to end with Rick being eager for the war and a transition into the war. But I don't think we're going to see Rick smiling, because of course he did that just in last episode. So it'll be a little repetitive. So to take the repetition out and not have it so like he's smiling again, it would be better in my opinion. The next question you have is, do you think Heath will come back after the war? Or if you were the director, what storyline would you want to showcase for him? So I think if Heath is going to come back, he's going to come back during the war. If he doesn't come back during the war, he's not going to be coming back anytime soon, maybe in a couple seasons. And in terms of a storyline I would give him, I would somehow tie his storyline to Magnus Group. But again, that's very difficult to say because I don't want the people who took him to be part of Magnus Group, because that just doesn't make sense. But I want his story to somehow be related to Magnus Group when he comes back. But I still want them to explain who took him and why they took him. And I just can't think of any good way to explain why that would be. If the people who took him are part of the comics as well. If they're not, then, whatever they do, we'll have to wait and see. But if it's something that's related to the comic book, they really have to explain why they took him, because I still can't understand why. If it's the Saviors, it doesn't make sense. If it's the Whisperers, it doesn't make sense. If it's Magnus Group, like I said, it still wouldn't make sense. So they need to explain who took him, and then maybe they can relate his comeback with Magnus Group. The last question you have is, what's next for Gabriel, Tobin, and Francine? Do you think it's obvious that Eric in the show will end up with his comic death? So for Tobin and Francine, they're going to continue to be background characters. So I don't think they'll get any more screen time that they've gotten. Tobin's been bigger than I thought he would be, but I still don't think he'll be a bigger character. I think he's still going to be a background character. For Father Gabriel, I think they're expanding his storyline a little bit. Mainly because, of course, in the last episode, we did see him run away and things like that. And his storyline seems to be connected to this new junkyard group. So they seem to be expanding his character and his storyline. But for the others, I don't think they're going to have a much bigger story. I think they're still going to be background characters. Now, in terms of Eric, I do agree with you that there is foreshadowing that he is going to get his comic death in the war. Because, of course, in the last episode, he had this scene in the house with Aaron, which, in my opinion, definitely foreshadows his story coming to an end. And his story being the same as it is in the comics. The next question comes from Evan Russell. They ask, who do you think the boot belonged to in the mid-season finale? So that boot belonged to a member of this new group that we ran into at the end of last episode, the Junkyard Group, aka the Garbage Pail Kids. But I don't exactly know who it would be. We haven't really seen their face yet. Or we may have, but we didn't get introduced to them yet. We don't know who they are. Their identity has not been revealed yet. And I don't think it's the leader. I don't think the person we saw in the promo of next episode is the person who was there. I think it's someone else. The next question comes from Royals King 35 Royal. They ask, how many seasons do you think The Walking Dead will go on for? Probably 10 to 12 right now. I think at least for them to finish up the story with Negan, that's going to be probably until the end of season 8. And then I definitely believe we're going to get a season 9. And then that's going to introduce another group. And that group is probably going to go until season 10. And then, of course, if they don't stop, if they continue, they're going to go for longer than that. Of course, in the comics, they're still going. So there's still source material for them to continue at that point. So I definitely think they will, if it's still as popular as it is right now. But probably, like I said, 10 to 12 seasons. The next question you have is, do you think Rick and Simon will go head to head and then cause a death like Morgan or someone from the hilltop? So one thing, I don't see Rick and Simon going head to head. I think if Rick is going to go head to head with anyone, it would be Negan. So I don't think Rick and Simon will go head to head. I think if Simon is going to go head to head with someone, it has to be someone else. It can't even be Daryl because Daryl has this rivalry with Dwight. So it's like they have their own thing. So it can't be Daryl, it can't be Rick. So it kind of has to be someone else. Now, in terms of whether them going head to head is going to lead to someone's death, yeah, that could be a possibility for sure. Now let's move on to the Walking Dead TV show / comic book questions. The first one comes from Ergin. They ask, "Hey Ash, did you see the big guy on the left side from the sneak peek for episode 710? Do you think that could be Beta from the comics?" So, no, I don't think that's Beta because that new group is not connected to the Whisperers at all. But if you're saying if someone like that could play the role of Beta, then yeah, I'm with you on that. Because when I was watching that, the first thing I noticed was that person, that big guy, and I thought he would be a perfect cast for Beta. But then again, when I'm saying this, I do realize that he was a bit skinny and Beta was very big in the comics. So I think if they're going to cast someone as Beta, it has to be someone who is not only as tall as the person we saw in there, but also very muscular, because he needs to be someone that intimidates someone as big as Negan. Because in the comics, Negan is huge, and then Beta is even more buff and muscular and big, and it's like Negan is intimidated by Beta. So I think if they're going to do that, they have to make sure that they pick someone who is much bigger than Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who plays Negan. But that's a great catch. I actually like your question. The next question comes from 0718 Dragonlord. They ask, for both the comic and the show, do you think the government is gone or are in hiding and may surface one day? So I definitely believe there are some government people and government agencies left, but I think they're so small right now that they don't have any power, that they're just like other survivors and they're in no position to be doing anything and to resurface or anything like that. I think they're much like everybody else. They're just surviving in this world. But I definitely do think that there are some members of the government left. For all we know, the president could even be alive in that world. And it's very possible because, of course, the president has these bunkers that are going to be used in situations like this. So it's not out of ordinary and unrealistic to assume that the president is still alive at this point. It may be a stretch, but I think it's not unrealistic either. Now let's move on to the Walking Dead comic book questions. The first one comes from Mandarin of Costa Rica, and they ask, which comic issue is best for you? So my favorite comic issue is definitely issue 100 or issue 145. Of course, issue 100 with Negan's big introduction, and issue 145 with the famous heads on spikes scenes. Those two issues are very iconic for me. Now, there are other issues that I really enjoy, but these two are at the very top. The next question comes from Steven Moraga. The first question you have is, which wars do you like more? And they're referring to the Whisper War and All Out War. I definitely like All Out War more because the Whisper War seems very flat to me, because it's like the war is not really over yet because there's still some Whisperers left and the herd is just coming in. So it's like the arc after the Whisper War arc is still attached to the Whisper War arc. And because of that, it seems like the Whisper War was not resolved. And because of that, I didn't enjoy it quite as much. Because for All Out War, even though we had the lead up to it, which was March to War, All Out War itself, which was the main part of the war, had all of the war in it. So at the end, it was resolved. So then the thing that came after it was a completely new thing. But in the Whisper War, when it was done, what came after was still connected to the Whisper War. So it feels like this war, which is the Whisper War, not the volume itself, but the Whisper War itself is not really done yet. So that's why I like All Out War more. But that being said, when we're completely done with the Whisper War, I may have a different answer for you. But that's a good question. The next question you have is, what is your favorite issue or volume so far? So for issue, I said in the previous question, my favorite issue is issue 100, which was Negan's introduction, and also issue 145 with the famous heads on spikes scene. But for my favorite volume, I would probably say it's All Out War. I definitely love All Out War. It's got to be my favorite arc so far. The next question comes from the Gaming Wolf, and they ask, do you think that the Saviors will all die or not be a threat at the end of volume 28? Definitely. I think the Saviors are not a long-term villain anymore. This time around, they're just going to be there for like 1 or 2 issues, and they're going to be taken care of. The next question you have is, if Beta returns, how do you think his returning intro will be? So I definitely believe Beta is going to return. So that's one. And then how I think he's gonna return. I think he's gonna return in a shocking manner. It's gonna be a situation where we're dealing with something else and we don't even have the whispers and beta in our mind. And then boom, he comes back and then he does something that blows our mind. Maybe he even kills a character. So it's like he hasn't been there, and then when he comes back, which is probably gonna be in a couple volumes, he's not gonna come back straight away. I think they're saving him for later. He's gonna come back in a few volumes, and then when he comes back, we're not even thinking of him. So that's why it's gonna be shocking. And to make it even more shocking, they could have him kill a big character when he comes back. So that would be cool as well. So now let's move on to Fear the Walking Dead questions. I haven't got any Fear questions. I barely get any, but here's one. It comes from David Farley. They ask, when will we get something for Fear the Walking Dead? So Season 3 of Fear the Walking Dead is actually pushed back, so it's going to be during the summer, not in April. So when Season 7 of The Walking Dead ends, we're not going to get Fear. We're going to get it in the summer. So because of that, it's way too early for us to get anything. So I think we're going to get something probably close to the summer. We're going to get promos, trailers, teasers, things like that at that time. Now, I don't even think they've begun filming Season 3 yet, so they don't really have anything to give us yet. So we have to wait till they shoot something and then they can release some information and teasers and things like that. That's it for this Q&A video. Thanks for participating. If you want to participate in my next Q&A video, write your questions in the comment section below. Make sure to put Q&A before your comment so I can find it. I'll be back for another video.